guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. I don't think I've filmed a video sitting here before. Maybe I have. I'm working with natural lighting today because I just couldn't be bothered to get like the big light and stuff. So the first thing I want to say before I launch into my book review video for today is that if you like my lipstick or want to know what it is, this is by Bite Beauty. It's one of their new like lip stain products, and it is in the shade Orange Fizz. I really like it so far. So I know I usually wonder what people are wearing on their lips, so I thought I would mention that. Now, normally I do a book review like once a month on my channel, and I do one book at a time, but I have 3 books for you today, and I don't want to like waste time harping on all the details, but one of them is a book that I actually read last year in 2018, towards the end of the year, I forget exactly when, and I was holding off on reviewing it because I wanted to watch the show that HBO made of it and then kind of compare the two. I watched like the first episode, and I actually still do plan on watching it all. It's Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, just in case you're wondering. But I just was like, you know what, let me just do this book review before. I don't know when I'll get time to watch that. So I'm just gonna talk about all 3. Let's get right into it. I will start off by just giving you like a quick yes or no, or kind of like ranking them 1, 2, 3. And then if you wanna know a little bit more about like each book, I will talk about them one by one. So the one that I read last year, the oldest one on like out of what I've read is this. It's Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. This for me was probably my number 1 out of all these 3 books. The other 2 were really good. I'll talk about those obviously, but like this was amazing. I think I read it in like a week, which is a lot for me. Next, I read Lilac Girls. This one is by Martha Hall Kelly. Historical fiction, World War II era, and this was also really good. This would probably be my number 2 slot out of these 3. And then my 3rd slot, but also a really good book was this. I just finished this today, actually. This is called Every Breath by Nicholas Sparks. So I would recommend all 3. This one is definitely if you're into like kind of thriller, dark creepiness. This one is if you're into historical fiction, and this one is if you are into romance. So they're all very different. So I recommend all 3. Now I'm going to spend a little bit more time being spoiler free, but giving you more info about all the books, okay? This book was dark. It was very dark, very creepy and twisted. This was definitely darker to me than Gone Girl. But essentially, it's about a reporter who used to live in this small town, and she had moved away, and I think she lives in like Chicago, like a bigger area. And then her guy, like that she works for, he sends her back to her tiny town to investigate this case with the disappearance of this young girl. And he knows that she's from that town originally, so he's kind of like, I think you'd be the best person for this. He wants to help get her some exposure. So she's in 2 minds about going because she just has like kind of a traumatic past there. She doesn't have the best relationship with her mom. She has a younger half-sister from her mom's like new husband who's like way younger. So there's one little girl that's missing in this town, and then the other eerie thing is that I think it was like a year before that, there was another girl that was missing or was killed. See, this was the problem with me not doing this right away. Was now it's kind of been some time and I can't remember all the details. Again, I'm not trying to spoil anything. These are kind of things that you find out like a little bit earlier on. But anyway, there ends up being, yeah, like these crimes in her small town, and she goes back and she stays with her mom, and she starts to investigate these disappearances and or murders, and they kind of try to figure out who it was in the town. And like, yeah, I'm sorry, this is not the best review because again, I don't remember all the details that well, and I also don't want to spoil them, but I'm just going to tell you that it's good. Camille, the main character, she also had recently been out of like a treatment center, like for psychiatric, she was like a cutter, and she was having kind of some depression issues. So it's really good. It's really twisty-turvy. Turvy? That's not a word. Twisty, topsy-turvy, curvy. I don't know what word I was trying to say. But yeah, if you like Gone Girl or anything that's kind of dark and psychological, I do recommend it. I think it's different than a lot of the like psychological home stories that you get, where it's like behind closed doors, or like a lot of them are more, that's even how Gone Girl was, where it's like a domestic story. It's the story of like a house, and the mom and the dad actually have all these issues. Like, it's not like that. It's not like about the relationship between a man and a woman. It's like the mom, the daughter, the stepsister, or the half-sister, the town, like whatever. It's really good. I really recommend it. I buzzed through it. Next book that I read, this one took me a while, partially just because I was so busy. This is called Lilac Girls. This is really cool. So this is set in like World War II time period, and it revolves around 3 characters. They're all women and they're all based on real people, which is really cool. So one of them lives in Germany, one of them lives in Poland, and one of them lives in New York. And without spoiling too much or giving too much away, I mean, I read this right after reading The Nightingale, which was an amazing historical fiction novel about World War II. So I was very much like in that mindset. But one of the characters who lives in Germany, she is a doctor. She just studied to become a doctor, and there's not a lot of assignments open. She's like a dermatologist, and I think there's only dermatology positions open, and she's looking for something a little bit more hands-on, like surgery type stuff. And so she ends up being a doctor at one of the concentration camps at Ravensbrück, which is the all women concentration camp, and like that's a real place and that was a real thing. So that's like a little bit of info with her. And then the other character we meet who's from Poland, I will tell you, normally I don't spoil really any details, but I have found that like those book reviews are just kind of lame. So I'm gonna give you some detail. She ends up being a prisoner at Ravensbrück, the Polish girl, and so you kind of see what happens there. And I'm not going to spoil what happens there. But then the third girl, she is named Caroline Faraday, and she works in New York City, but she works for an orphanage or like a company that helps like French children and French people. And so as this is all happening with the World War, how do I explain like her storyline? That's kind of hard, but their 3 stories end up like connecting, I will just say that much. And it was really interesting, and historical fiction has definitely been like a new favorite genre of mine, and I was fascinated to see that these 3 people were like real people, and it was just really interesting and really good, and I recommend it. So yeah, those 3 characters and then their stories kind of end up coming together in a way, and I won't spoil the ending or anything, but you just kind of see what happens. So, okay, and then the last book that I just finished today is Every Breath by Nicholas Sparks. This one a coworker just randomly gave to me. Actually, all 3 of these were like lent to me by people who were like, oh, you should read this. And I have read Nicholas Sparks in the past. I think I read Dear John and maybe 1 or 2 others. I mean, for those of you who know, like he wrote The Notebook, he wrote A Walk to Remember. Like there are so many kind of classic, like cheesy romance, but like beautiful romance stories that are very like, you know, could be made into these, not even rom-coms, just like romantic movies. And I think when I was a little bit younger, I was even more into that, but it's been a long time since I've read one of these types of books. So the coworker gave it to me and I was like, okay, let me read it. And what's really cool about this one is that it is actually based on real people. So the story is actually pretty true, which that actually really kind of helped me, I guess. I don't know. So what I will say, it was a really easy read. It was just like a really good, it felt good to kind of read one of these easy, carefree. I feel like it would be a good beach read compared to some of the other ones I've been doing that are a little bit more historical fiction, you know, a lot more like facts, or the psychological ones that really make you think. Like this was just like an easy, fun, like lighthearted, but also not. There's some bad stuff that happens type of read. The thing that I guess was like a little bit of like a negative, but it's kind of what you sign up for with like romance novels, is it was like a little cheesy and it was a little far-fetched, I guess, for me. But at the same time, it's based on a true story, so it's really not far-fetched because it really did happen. But essentially it is the story of a guy named True who lives in Zimbabwe as a like safari director, basically. And you hear a little bit about his backstory, how he was born into a lot of money. His grandfather like owned a lot of land. They owned this big farm in Zimbabwe and they have all this money. But then there was a fire and his mom died in the fire when he was young, and his grandfather, the colonel, had all this power, and now he has like this stepfather. Yeah, so he didn't know his real dad. He only had a stepdad, the grandfather, and then the mom who had passed away. He receives a letter in the mail along with a plane ticket, and it essentially says like, hi, I'm your real dad, like I would like to meet you, can you please, like I bought you a flight, whatever. And the flight takes him to, I think it's North Carolina or South Carolina. North Carolina. So he ends up getting on this flight, and when he gets there, it's like this mansion of a house. There's like a car service that takes him to the house. Like, so it's clear that his dad, that he didn't even know he had really, or he didn't know who his dad was, has all this money. But his dad can't meet him until like the following Saturday. And I think he gets there on like a Monday or Tuesday or something. So he's just kind of getting acquainted, getting familiar with the beach house and the beach town. And he ends up taking a walk one day on the beach where he notices this dog that runs off and gets hit by a car. Luckily the dog's okay, whatever, but he picks up the dog and he brings it back and he finds who its owner is, which enter the character Hope, who is the female lead in this story. And she is somebody whose parents have a beach house right next door to the mansion one that True is staying at. And it's this quaint little cottage that's been there forever. It's nowhere near as like gargantuan and like, you know, a lot of people like on the beach like the more classic old things versus people tearing down and rebuilding. So she is staying at the beach house for the week because her friend is getting married that Saturday, and you learn about her. Both characters are kind of in their mid-30s or their late 30s, and she has been in this relationship with this guy for 5 years, but it's on again, off again, and it's currently off again, and he's just kind of being a jerk, and he's in Las Vegas with his buddies, and leaves her to go to this wedding alone, and she's just kind of like not happy about it, and like thinking to herself like, I was supposed to get married and have kids by now. Whatever. They meet. You can probably guess that, I mean, it's kind of a spoiler, but it's a Nicholas Sparks book, like a boy and a girl. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? They essentially fall in love. They essentially hit it off. I mean, they start to talk, and like first it starts with like, oh, do you want to come have a cup of coffee? Or like, I forget exactly, but they spend like the weekend together or whatever. And one really cool thing, which this is real, again, this whole story is real, is that I guess there's a mailbox at this beach called Kindred Spirit. This beach is called Sunset Beach in North Carolina. And it's this amazing mailbox where people go and they leave letters and notes. And I guess it's just like anybody can read them, anybody can leave one, you can take them, you can whatever. And a lot of people leave these like beautiful like love story notes. And actually, this is how Nicholas Sparks got the idea to write this book to begin with, is because he happened to be visiting. He found a note in there where the love story just was like so beautiful to him and so inspirational to him that he tracked down who the real people were in the letter. And then he like interviews them and does this whole thing. So the two characters, they go to this Kindred Spirit mailbox, and like, how much do I want to tell you without spoiling? I mean, it's definitely a love story between the two of them. It doesn't just end happily right away, or maybe not really at all. That's almost up for interpretation on how the ending is. But yeah, so they meet and they just have this like undeniable connection. I will tell you that the story doesn't end there. Like, there's a lot more to it, and so yeah, I really don't want to spoil it, but it was this really beautiful, sweet love story. And even though it was like a little cheesy in a way, like, oh, they fell in love in the course of 3 days, I know that that can happen. Like, I literally, not to be cheese nation, I fell in love with my fiance in the course of like 3 days. I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but when I met him, you know, it was just like that instant sparks fly type of thing. And anyway, so again, it was kind of nice, maybe like a guilty pleasure to escape in this like romantic, like fantasy world. The ending was a little sad. I don't want that to spoil anything. It was a little bit happy, a little bit sad, and yeah, I could see them making like yet another Nicholas Sparks movie out of this, but also maybe not. I don't know. I did think the cool thing about this, like I said, is that this was based on real people, and Nicholas Sparks has author's notes at the beginning and at the end where he kind of tells you how he came about writing this and all of that. So it was really good. And these are 3 totally different novels, but again, if I had to rank them, I would say 1, 2, and 3. With that said, I'm going to repeat myself like a broken record. I still do recommend all of them. They were great. My apologies, it's kind of warm here today in Portland. I hope you guys liked that book review, including more than one book, and also just like giving a little bit more info than I normally do. I kind of feel like that's better. I don't know. I'm going to go now. Thank you for watching. I hope this lighting was okay, and I will see you next time. Love you. Bye.